Hi there. So a very warm welcome to Brixton Buddhist Community's Monday night meditation class. So my name is Viryanaga. So I'm an ordained Buddhist in the Viryanaga Buddhist order, and I'm also one of the regular teachers at the Brixton Buddhist Community, where I've taught meditation for a number of years. So yeah, really delighted you could join us. So what we're going to do tonight is we'll have two short meditations that you can join in with. So we'll be doing a body scan meditation and then a second meditation on blue sky mind in the second part. And then I'm also going to give you a bit of an overview of all the 5 hindrances and particularly the pairing that we're exploring tonight, restlessness, anxiety and blue sky mind. So this is the first of a 5-part series that we're going to be doing over the next 5 weeks. So hopefully you can tune in or check out all 5 of those. And if you're liking our streams, do just make sure you subscribe to our channel and hit the alert bell so you know when we're going live. And just to say, there will be an opportunity for questions tonight. So if you've got any questions or queries or want to relate anything of your meditation experience today, we will be in the chat room, so you can just drop in some comments in the YouTube chat room, and we'll try to answer some of those. We may not have time for all of them, but we'll answer some of them on the stream tonight, and any we don't get around to, we'll answer in the comments later on. Okay, great. So let's get settled. So we'll do a body scan meditation to start with. So what I'd recommend for this is if you've got meditation cushions and you sit on the floor normally, then that's great. You can get yourself comfortable. But if you don't have any of that, that's absolutely fine. So you can just set yourself up with a chair, a comfortable chair, or even you can set up wherever you are in a way. What I would recommend is just make sure you can sit upright and you're not slouching too much in your chair. So in meditation we want a kind of relaxed but upright posture to help our energy flow. So if you just get yourself settled and set up, however you need, we'll just do this body scan meditation. So I'll just give you a minute or so to do that, and I'll just talk a bit while you're getting ready. But in the body scan meditation, what we're doing is we're just starting to tune in to the sensations in the body. So there is quite a lot going on in our bodies that we don't spend a lot of time attending to day to day. Perhaps we're on the computer or we're getting on with things, and we don't usually tune in to all the sort of subtle and varied sensations in the body. Some of them will likely be unpleasant aches, pains and tensions, and other ones might be enjoyable, curious sensations, little frissons of energy and so on. So we're just tuning into the whole spectrum of what's going on in our meditations. Okay, so if you're ready, you can just close your eyes. And I always like to start with the sense of contact with the ground or the cushion or the chair. And what I mean by these sensations is particularly bringing your attention onto the weight of your body, pressing into any of those things, whatever you're sitting on, whatever you're lying on. So how does that pressure feel on the cushion, on your knees, on the backs of your legs? And we're trying to avoid thinking about the idea of that, if you see what I mean. We're trying to just tune into the actual sense of the pressure. How does the pressure feel? And you might just like to see if that for you feels like typically a sort of pleasant sensation or an interesting sensation, or whether that's a little bit unpleasant. And you don't need to make any judgments about that. You can just sort of see if it has that feeling tone, that sense of pleasantness or unpleasantness, or just perhaps a sort of neutralness as well. Okay, so I'm not going to take you all the way through the body in this body scan, but I'm particularly just going to focus on a few areas of the body which we typically hold tension. So from low down in the body, you might like to bring your awareness, which firstly getting a sense maybe of the whole lower part of the body. It's often said that the body can be like a mountain, so the great mountain broad at the bottom. So you might just like to get a sense of your body as a broad-bottomed mountain. And from there you might like to just bring your awareness a little bit higher, up into the belly, up into the stomach, And I like to start just by bringing a few deeper breaths right into the belly. And as I breathe in and breathe out, just seeing if you can relax the stomach a little. So we so often hold our stomachs in as we go about day to day, but we don't need to do that just at the moment. We can just let our stomachs be soft. Let them be moved by our diaphragm. Let them be moved by the breath. And then from the stomach, you can just bring your awareness perhaps up the spine. And some people do hold tension in the spine or areas around the back of the shoulders. So if you do have habitual tension there, you might like to just to see if you can imagine those muscles softening or loosening or relaxing. It's not always easy to do that consciously, but you could kind of imagine what that might feel like if it loosens up. And then quite naturally from there we come onto the shoulders. And if you're anything like me, you might hold your shoulders up high around your neck. But just seeing if you can let those shoulders soften slightly, seeing if you can perhaps feel the weight of your arms just pulling the shoulders down. And again, it's not always easy to consciously do this, although you may be able to manage that. But you're more just seeing if you can just let gravity act on your arms and let those shoulders sink a little bit further down. I imagine all of us might be able to get a little bit more softness into the shoulders. And although it's not an area that we often hold that much tension, it's always good to spend a little bit of time dwelling on the hands. So the hands are extremely sensitive. Lots of touch receptors in the hands. One of our main ways of interacting with our environment. So just bringing your awareness down your arms into the hands, and maybe just seeing if you can get in touch with some of the more subtle sensations that you might experience there. So perhaps you've got a sense of your hands resting upon one another, or in your lap, on the blanket, on your clothes. But perhaps there's also a sense of a lightness or an energy in your fingertips. Perhaps a sense of your hands being slightly moist, or perhaps you can feel the temperature in the room. So perhaps your room is a bit cold or a bit warm. You can feel air currents moving around perhaps. So just seeing what's there for you. And of course, there's no right or wrong experience here. You may not feel very much at all. But just by looking, by being curious, we're just helping to concentrate our awareness, which will help us in the meditation later on. And it's very good just to, if not much is going on, just to see if you can wait patiently for something to open up, something to emerge. And then from the hands, you can bring, again, your awareness up the arms, just checking that your shoulders are still soft and they haven't risen up again. And just letting them perhaps fall down, sink down once more. And then we can dwell a little on the head. And I particularly like to start at the back of the head and the ears, in part because I can't usually feel very much there. So just to really just see what is there, what I can notice. So perhaps I can feel my ears a little bit, perhaps it's a bit of cold air moving around. And I just have a sort of general sense of the back of my head, but just seeing what you can notice there. And again, no need to think about it too much or make a judgment. You're just sort of being observant to sensations that are in our experience. Then we can come on to the forehead, and yeah, again, this for me, this is a real spot of tension. So just seeing if you can allow those muscles around your eyes to soften, forehead and eyes. So we use these muscles all day long to make expressions and to communicate with people. But of course, there's no need to do that right now. We can just allow our foreheads and our eyes to be soft, our expressions to be soft. And it's another area where it's quite hard to consciously relax those muscles. But even just getting a sense of what it might feel like without the tension present can just help us soften into that. Okay, and then from the forehead, perhaps the cheeks. Can you feel anything around there, or your nose? Again, another area where maybe we don't feel things so strongly, but it's interesting to be aware of anything that's there, perhaps tuning into the more subtle sensations. And then particularly spending a little bit of time on the mouth and jaw. So the jaw is a very big muscle. It's what we use to eat, to chew, to speak. So it works very, very hard, and that can mean that we often find that there's quite a lot of residual tension, and particularly if you're somebody that has a tendency to grind your teeth, as I do. I do that slightly, so I find it really helpful just to allow my jaw just to loosen slightly so that my teeth aren't touching, and just seeing if you can allow your jaw to hang down. And you might find that you become a bit self-conscious at this point, but that's okay. You can just wait, just sit through it, and you'll find that that quickly evaporates. And maybe you can just kind of get a sense of enjoyment or pleasure out of the sense of your face and your jaw just being soft and loose and not having to work hard at all. So we can just wait in that space just for a few minutes, or even less than a few minutes, just for a few moments. It's usually enough. And then you'll probably quite naturally start to notice that your attention gets drawn onto the breath. So the breath with this unending flow of breath going in, breath going out, the flow and process of your life. So just tuning into that breath. And particularly at the moment, you might find you're a little unwell and maybe your breathing isn't all that comfortable. But that's okay as well. You can just try to stay with that experience, whether it's a pleasant, enjoyable experience or whether it's an unpleasant one. So what we're always trying to do in these meditations is just to really engage with what our actual experience is and not be too selective around whether it's a pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience. We need to let those all in to our experience. So even if your breath is a bit uncomfortable, just seeing if you can stay with that and try not to push away that unpleasant experience. If you do have a sense of calm, a sense of relaxation arising as a result of the body scan, perhaps the breath will feel more enjoyable for you. And you can just enjoy that, just stay with that sensation and just enjoy the breath. Okay, and now when you're ready, and in your own time, you can just start to bring this meditation to a close, and you can open your eyes when you're ready. Okay, so I hope that's allowed you to start feeling a bit more present, a bit more here. We'd normally say in this room if we were doing a class, but of course in your own room, in your own space. But I find even a short body scan can really set us up and make us more open and receptive. And it's very appropriate for this topic that we're about to talk about. So yes, so I'm going to say a bit about the 5 hindrances generally, and then I'm going to speak specifically about restlessness and anxiety and the response. Well, one of the responses to that, which is a sky-like mind or a blue sky mind. So the 5 hindrances are very traditional kind of Buddhist category. Buddhism loves categories. So it's 5 categories of kind of mental states or mental unhelpful mental activity that really get in the way of us becoming concentrated and focused in meditation. And they all have a sort of tendency to absorb our energy or scatter our energy to distract us in meditation. And part of the problem is that so often we can get stuck in these. So you've probably all had those meditations where you just get wrapped up in your thoughts and you just can't actually attend to the breath or to others or whatever meditation practice you're doing. And to make it even worse, we can often indulge them, can't we? We can often indulge them and sort of add layer upon layer of other things to it. So I remember being on a long retreat once and we were doing quite a lot of meditation, and I remember just one time just thinking, God, I'm so sick of meditating, and just allowing myself to indulge in basically frivolous or fantasy sort of thoughts, and just there not being the ability in that then to sort of attend to my inner experience in a way. So yeah, these five hindrances are a desire for sense impression or a craving for sense impression, a sort of ill will or a kind of sort of frustration, anxiety and restlessness, a sloth or torpor or laziness, and a doubt. Doubt is the other one. So we'll be exploring these over the next 5 weeks together with 5 responses or antidotes to those. So tune in for those. But this week in particular, we're going to talk about restlessness and anxiety. So I thought, given the nature of current events with the coronavirus epidemic, we thought we would, there's a lot of opportunity, isn't there, for anxiety, whether about oneself, one's own health, one's relatives, and so on. But also plenty of opportunity for restlessness. Maybe you're self-isolating. I mean, the Buddhist community that I live in has, several of us are unwell, so we're of course staying in. So, we going about, after a few days, there's lots of opportunity for restlessness to arise. So yeah, I imagine there's quite a lot to work with given these. This particular area, so I thought it would be pertinent to start with this one. And so I thought I'd firstly talk about a few expressions of that. I'm sure you've all got your own examples, but maybe just to give you a little bit more to go on, and then I'll talk a bit about this sky-like mind or some of the responses to that. And it's worth saying that actually we'll be talking about a sort of hindrance and an antidote each week, but actually the antidotes can often be used for any hindrance. So although we're doing them in pairs, quite often you can use a range of different antidotes to the hindrances. So they're not necessarily that there's only one way out of each one. But nevertheless, I've paired them up in terms of which ones for me I find most valuable to apply. So with so particularly with restlessness and anxiety, or maybe I'll start with restlessness. So particularly there's a real tendency with restlessness to wanting to be elsewhere, or wanting to be doing something else, or even with somebody else. Maybe you're with somebody who you're finding a bit dull, and you just have this craving or this wish to be elsewhere. It definitely comes with a sort of inability to sit through boredom. So it's sort of so easy nowadays that we just have anything that we want available on tap, or just through our literally on tap via our smartphones. And yeah, we seem to have a much reduced ability just to sit and do nothing. I mean, you should try it sometime. A 10-minute sitting, doing nothing practice with a cup of tea is a surprisingly difficult practice. So yeah, so this restlessness, if you know, there's a tendency to not be able to, or be bored actually, allow any boredom to creep in. And often in terms of views or ideas, it can often be associated with the idea that we need this thing or we need that thing to be happy. We need this job, that house, that car, that partner in order to be happy. There's kind of a discontent or a dissatisfaction in one's life. So perhaps you notice some of that in your own life. And of course that could be you know, to a stronger or to a lesser degree. So I guess I also started with this one because I have a tendency in this area. So I feel, in a strange way, I feel able to talk about it. In terms of anxiety, restlessness, of course, can be a form of anxiety. So they're not two separate things. But particular qualities of anxiety are around a kind of worrying or a constant guessing about the future. So even though things may be okay now, you're constantly kind of worried or concerned about things which could happen in the future. Of course, there's nothing wrong with a bit of sensible planning, but a friend of mine once said that planning was a sick hindrance, he said. But actually, I think it comes under this sense of anxiety. So I think there's a bit of a line between sensible, realistic planning and kind of going over things to the nth degree, making sure you've got everything packed and this thing and that thing, and what happens if this happens, and so on. So basically, that can be also be a form of anxiety, one that I actually find myself falling into quite regularly, particularly in meditation, I must say. Yeah, that tends to be a bit of a default for me to go into planning. But yeah, so it's basically a sense of anxiety. And if it's very bad, it can present you, it can mean that you're just unable to appreciate well, what's going on, what's around you. It can be, again, a sort of form of sort of discontent, if you like. And those of you that are familiar with Buddhism or Dharma might recognize there's a sort of parable of the second dart. So the idea being that you know, life sometimes just throws up things which cause you discontent or suffering, and that's the first arrow or the first dart. But what we then do is we ladle on top of that the worry about who shot this arrow and why me and why does this happen? It always happens to me, etc. And so therefore it's like being shot with then a second arrow, a second dart. So what Buddhism says is that you can't do anything about that first dart. All you can do, but that second dart is really optional. So yeah, so there's a certain, so with this hindrance, there's a sense that we make a bad situation worse for ourselves, and there's no need for us to do that. So it might also just be worth highlighting that, you know, now that we're all online a lot more, given that a lot of us are housebound, you know, the internet is often a place where lots of strong opinions and judgments are made. You know, I think of Facebook forums and chat rooms and so on. And yeah, you know, to have strong opinions or strong judgments doesn't tend to lead towards calm, if you see what I mean. There's nothing wrong, of course, with good debate and you know, good factually based conversation. But if you hold something very strongly or tightly, and you feel that you really need to defend that view, that's going to cause you a bit of disturbance a bit of mental disturbance in your mind. So yeah, just be sort of prepared for that. So that would be another sort of, if you like, modern day expression of restlessness and anxiety as a hindrance to meditation or a hindrance to concentration. Okay, so how about the responses? So I'm sure we're all familiar with this in some way in our lives. I'm definitely in that category. But the solutions typically, more generally or broadly, what we're basically aiming to do is try to cultivate a sense of open-mindedness and receptivity to our experience. So as I said, talking about strong opinions and views, you know, having open-mindedness to things going on around us, things that we're exposing ourselves to, but also real open-mindedness and receptivity to what's going on for us. And particularly in meditation, particularly in terms of thoughts, that can include trying to cultivate or generate a kind of friendlier relationship to our own minds, particularly our worrying minds, in a way, not trying to reject or avoid or push away what we're feeling or the thoughts that we're having, a sense of observing, recognizing, acknowledging, and just sort of seeing. And if we can, trying to distance ourselves slightly. So, if we can be a kind of objective observer to our thoughts as they happen, that can be really beneficial, particularly if we're prone to these more restless or worrisome thoughts. And there's a very good line, I think it comes from mindfulness-based therapies, mindfulness-based stress reduction and cognitive therapy. And there's a saying that thoughts are not facts. So I think that's really, I really like that. I think it's a really useful reminder that what we think isn't necessarily us. I'm sure you've all had that experience of our minds throwing up all sorts of random stuff, whether that's in our dreams or just day to day, sort of burblings of the mind. And it's never very clear where it comes from, is it? A lot of it is just sort of garbage. Some of it's good, of course, but there's some of it is just sort of bits of old memories, bits of films, bits of music, and actually it's not really that important. So whatever we're thinking isn't necessarily true. Yeah, that's really useful to remember. And a very useful approach to this is also just not trying to rush into fixing or changing our thoughts. So if there's thoughts that we think we shouldn't be having, or we should be having, or that we don't want to be having, not trying to close those down or fix them or change them. If you do want to change the content of your thoughts, then steady effort and meditation will help with that. But actually, just pushing things away will just cause pushing thoughts away will cause them to become entrenched and fixed, and then it's more difficult to shift them. Another great way I really like is just bring humour to your thought processes. Like if you're able to observe what goes on in your mind, some of it is completely ridiculous, and really good just to laugh at that a little bit. Perhaps you've had, a really nice dinner and you find yourself thinking about seconds or thirds while you're still eating your first meal, or you're just ruminating on a silly video that you watched on YouTube or something, and you can just sort of laugh at the ridiculousness of your mind throwing up sort of nonsense stuff again and again. So you might just like to be, I guess that what I'm trying to say as a principle is just to be quite light-hearted with the majority of our thoughts, particularly if they have that tendency of restlessness or anxiety. So all of these things I'm talking about have this kind of idea of an open space, an open receptive space, which is where the saying a sky-like mind comes in. So what we're aiming to do, particularly in meditation, is to observe our thoughts as though they were clouds in the sky. So we're just sitting there perhaps on top of a mountain, and we're just watching as these thoughts come into our awareness, drift through our consciousness and drift out the other side without kind of trying to get into the sky, get into the clouds. We're just letting them pass by as if they are clouds. And of course, some of them will be stormy, maybe even some of them will have lightning coming out of the bottom of them. Some of them will be little fluffy things, some of them will rain at you. But we're just watching them pass by, observing them as they happen. So in a moment, I'll lead us through a meditation that will include some of these elements. You can just explore that for yourself in your meditation practice. But also I just wanted to give a few more general aspects of ways of working with restlessness and anxiety as well. So particularly with restlessness, if you find that if you sit down to meditate and you find that it's almost like you've got a spring on your seat and you just can't settle, you can't sit for but a moment, you can also just engage in meditative activities. So one example would be, of course, you can do walking meditation, and also forms of exercise or yoga can be very helpful. You could go out for a run. Don't take your music with you. Just go on your own, and maybe you can just try to really get into the experience of your body moving, your body breathing, and then that can be a way of kind of refining or clarifying some of those restless energies and working with those restless energies, particularly in areas where maybe you're prone to a bit more anxiety or worrying or so on. Particularly if there's elements of regret about your ruminating over the past, perhaps, or even worrying about the future. It can be very good to talk to your friends about it, so that can just help to bring it out. And if it's particularly historical things that you feel a bit of guilt or shame around, the practice of kind of making a confession to yourself or to your friends, or even making an apology to people if it involves others, can be really helpful to just unstick that energy. Of course, you may still need to work in meditation as well, but it can just get things moving again. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest we do now is we can we'll settle down to meditate. So after the meditation, there will be an opportunity for questions. So to take questions. So if you've got any questions about things I've just said, or in this meditation, if an experience emerges for you that you'd like to share, do put them in the chat room in the comments. But yeah, well, there'll be a bit of time at the end for that. But let's get ourselves set up for another meditation. And again, it doesn't matter if you don't have to sit on the floor, you can sit in a chair, just get yourself comfortable. And we'll be sitting for about 20 minutes now, so just make sure you've got everything you need. If you need a blanket or you need a cushion, just go and get whatever you need to meditate. Okay, so I'll just give you a moment or two to do that. Okay, so when you're ready, you can just start by closing your eyes if you want to. And then we can just firstly connect in with the body again, connect in with that sense of body awareness that we hopefully generated in that first short meditation. Perhaps coming into contact with a sense of the ground, a sense of you sitting. Perhaps you might want to quickly check the areas of the body that you may hold tension normally, just seeing if they're relaxed, the belly, the shoulders, forehead, the jaw. And then you can just start to pick up the sensations of the breath again. Sky-like mind meditation. So throughout this meditation, we're just going to use the breath as an anchor. So what I mean by this is just keeping our awareness or our attention on the breath, on the sensations of breathing, perhaps feeling our diaphragm move up and down, feeling our chest expand, perhaps feeling the air entering our body, down our throat, into our chest, and back out again. And I'd recommend just choosing one area to attend to, an area that you feel the breath most strongly or more clearly, and just staying there. So some of you may be familiar with the mindfulness of breathing practice, but we're going to try and, whereas that's a focusing in practice, we're going to try and keep a very broad awareness in this meditation. So using the breath as an anchor, but turning our attention outwards. And just trying to hold a kind of sense of our whole experience. So particularly our embodied experience, a sense of our body sitting here. Sense of the breath in the body. And also a sense of our environment that we're sitting in. So the room that we're in, the sounds that we can hear around us if there's things going on. Perhaps there are other people with you, meditating with you, so a sense of them. And we can just sit, we want to sit with this very open, broad awareness. So this if you like, is the sky like mind, the broad awareness. And in that sky like mind, we can just let everything in. So we can let in a sense of our body sensations, also a sense of our feelings, our emotions, how we are, how we find ourselves today. And the aim here is just to be really honest with ourselves. So if we're not feeling well, or we are anxious or restless, or feeling another emotion, just really acknowledging that. We're not judging, we're not trying to change, we're not trying to fix it, we're not trying to avoid it. We're just allowing it to be there. We're recognizing it, seeing it, allowing it to be there. We may, of course, find that our emotional state is actually also quite positive. We might find that we feel quite well, we feel quite settled, at ease, content, joyful. And we can also just let those in. We don't need to think about why we're feeling that way. We don't need to work out how we can get more of it. Seeing if you can allow it to be there. You may find that you have both elements present simultaneously. That's also fine. Just being open, receptive, aware, patient. And then the same is true with our thoughts. So we don't need to exclude our thoughts from our meditation. We can allow our thoughts to be there. If you notice thoughts in your mind, the main thing is just not to go with them, not to get drawn into them, not to perpetuate them or indulge them. Just observe them. And there may be some important thoughts there. There may be some thoughts that you feel are valuable. But you don't even need to worry about those. If they are valuable, they'll just come back outside of meditation when you've finished meditating. And if they don't, they probably weren't that important anyway. So just like the clouds in the sky, when you notice a thought enter your awareness, just perhaps acknowledging the content of that thought. You might like to imagine it as a cloud, either a light fluffy one or a grey dark rain cloud. And just see if you can watch it as it passes through your sky-like mind. Moving across the sky and hopefully passing its way out the other side. And I'm just going to give you a few minutes, or I'm not going to say very much, just to allow you to explore that in your own way. So you could work visually with the image of the sky and the clouds, or you might just observe, notice, and let go of the thoughts as they arise in your mind. So in whatever way feels helpful to you, just seeing if you can work in that way. Of course, this will work with other forms of mental states as well as restlessness and anxiety. So you can just really be creative with your practice. Just try things out, be curious, be patient, and see what works for you. So if you find yourself being drawn into the sky and the clouds, just trying once again to distance yourself. Perhaps remind you that thoughts are not facts. Seeing if you can again take the place of the observer rather than the person being swept away or swept into the sky. And of course you may find that if you watch out for the clouds, suddenly they all seem to disappear. You're untroubled by thoughts, in which case you can just really enjoy that space, that receptivity hopefully that's opened up in you. There's no need to fill that void, that space in the sky. You can just enjoy the feeling of that, the metaphor of the blue sky, the clear blue sky of your mind. Okay, so now I just want to introduce another image that you may find useful. It's definitely part of the same kind of openness and receptivity and a way of working with our thoughts, which is to imagine us sitting on the banks of a stream. So you may be in a fertile meadow, the sun shining down. And the stream, of course, represents our minds, the workings of our minds, constantly flowing, with information, ideas, thoughts, emotions. A constant stream of the mind. And on that stream you can think of your thoughts, particularly thoughts, anxious thoughts or restless thoughts or impulses, as leaves. So maybe there are trees overhanging the river, and every so often a leaf falls from the tree, falls onto the water, and you can just sit on the bank of the river watching the thought leaf wend its way down the river, dodging rocks and eddies, and just passing on down until you can no longer see it. And of course we don't want to be in the river, we don't want to be swept into the river. We just want to stand or sit on the bank, watching our mind, watching our thoughts as they carry on with their flow. And while you're imagining this image, just remembering to stay open, both physically and emotionally, open and receptive, engaged with what's going on around us, letting in sounds, aware of others' presence. So just seeing if you can sort of hold that all together. Sense of the flow of the mind, the leaves of thought as they flow through, and just our place in our environment. And you may find, of course, that you've got a lot of leaves on your river, but in some places maybe they get a bit clogged. But that's okay. You can just, if you just notice, just be patient, just allow them to be there, to work their way down. Eventually they will pass on down the stream. Okay, so you can just, in your own time, let those images go. And before we end the meditation, we can just come back to the sense of the body, and the breath in the body. Just seeing if you can sit really open, really receptive, without needing to do anything. Sort of just sitting, just being. You can let in whatever's going on around you, any noises that you can hear. An awareness of those sitting with you, presence of them. And then when you're ready, you can start to bring this meditation to a close. Okay, so we'll do some questions in a moment. We'll take some questions, but I hope that gave you a kind of sense of how you might work with kind of restless or anxious states. With all of these, as I said before, they don't necessarily, this antidote, or if you like, this kind of way of working won't only work for restlessness or anxiety, but I particularly find it very helpful. So you might like to just to try this. And of course, you don't need to be sitting in formal meditation posture. You can do this wherever you find yourself, in the kitchen, at work, wherever you are. And it only takes a few minutes to step back from your thoughts, bring to mind the sky and the clouds, or the sense of the river and the leaves, and just see if that will get you out of a kind of rumination or worry or a concern or whatever. So anyway, I'd be keen to hear how you get on with that. So do leave us some comments in the comment section, and I'll just go over to Adam now to find out if we've got any questions that I can answer for you.
We don't actually have any questions yet, but Jojo left a comment earlier on saying, I find it difficult to keep a concentrated mind in meditation these days due to the bombardment of coronavirus information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure, there's a real tendency, isn't there, to want to know what's going on. I think at the moment there is, there's a lot of uncertainty, isn't it? We just don't know how long this current situation is going to go on for. We don't know quite what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And literally how long it's going to go on for. So there's a desire to, find out about that. But of course, it's not always helpful. It's not always helpful because the tendency is to then, if we don't quite get what we're looking for in terms of certainty, it just opens up the doors to anxiety or rumination. So there's a number of different things I might suggest in a way. One would be that you could just limit the amount of time we spend looking at news. Obviously, it's good to keep us up to date with things, but I don't know about you, but I'm checking my phone, like checking BBC News or checking The Guardian or whatever, quite a lot, whatever your favourite form of media is. It's always possible to reduce that, and actually that will have an effect on how settled our minds are. I mean, the same thing, I guess, going slightly off on a tangent now, but also if we are at home and maybe we're off work, then there's a tendency just to fill our time with kind of entertainment. Maybe we're watching Netflix a lot or playing games or whatever it is, and that can just have there's nothing wrong with that per se, but just do just keep it in balance. And if you find yourself feeling restless or anxious, maybe try to rebalance that a little bit with a bit more spacious activity. And the other thing I'd recommend, sorry, it's quite a lot here, isn't there, Jojo? I hope this is all helpful. The other thing I can recommend is maybe just try, as I said, just sitting a bit. So maybe get yourself a cup of tea. And before meditation, you could just sit and do nothing for 10 minutes, just as a way of kind of changing gear, changing mode. So that might be really helpful, just to give yourself a bit of space. I'd also actually recommend giving yourself a bit of space after meditation. So not immediately jumping back into work emails or something like that. So if you can, just having 5-10 minutes, more if possible, after meditation, just to help yourself settle a bit more. Okay, hope that's helpful. Nothing else, Adam? Okay, great. Well, I hope you've enjoyed tuning in to this Monday night meditation. So yeah, we do subscribe to our channel. We'll be offering much more over the coming weeks. We're building up our online activities, and do hit the alert bell as well, so you get notifications for when we are live streaming on our channel. And just to say that tonight we won't be having a Zoom discussion after the meditation, but we will be starting to offer that next week. So if you'd like to share your meditation experiences or ask an experienced practitioner for some one-to-one or one-to-two or 1-to-5, whatever, help with your meditation practice, then you'll be able to. That will be offered from next week after our live stream. So our next event this week will be on Wednesday at 7:30. So that'll be a live stream, and that'll be a good friend of mine and a very experienced teacher, Sudhaka, talking about on what the Buddha said about being human. So that's our Buddhism and meditation live stream on Wednesday at 7:30, and that's Greenwich Mean Time for any of our international followers. And yeah, just to say also that we if we were to do these in a Buddhist centre, we collect donations at the end, so it helps us keep everything running. And actually, the amount that we need to take care of to run these streams is probably no less than what we do to run classes. So quite a few of us work very hard behind the scenes to make all of these things happen. So just like everyone else, we need to continue to collect donations to make sure everything at the Brixton Buddhist Community and these live streams and additional videos can be shot and edited and processed. So we are really reliant on your donations, and so there is no other income stream for the Brixton Buddhist Community other than generous people like yourselves giving. So there's a link in the description of the video, so please do think about giving for either give for the month or give us a chunk or pay for this video, and watch out for our other more we'll have some fundraising bills over the coming weeks. So hope you enjoyed that. Enjoy the next. Hope you get on okay for the next couple of days in these uncertain times, and I hope you enjoy your meditations and they're rich and enjoyable. And yeah, look forward to seeing you on Wednesday for our Buddhism and meditation live stream. Okay, stay well.